Okay, so um, our first panel for our 20th anniversary forum on the very interesting subject, which is WebRTC. And the WebRTC is you listen to the whole track of presentations, and as you can see, WebRTC is dramatically affecting the communications world right now. No companies can ship any marketing materials without WebRTC being mentioned there, no matter how. Even in, I mean, might not be related to the products, but doesn't matter. WebRTC have to be mentioned. So it's technology which might or might not change the world. So, and this would be one of the goals for this panel to run down some interesting questions. So in the panel, today you already met a couple of people who are in the panel, but let me just briefly introduce, if you want to take a little more time and introduce yourselves, but that would be fine. But just for now, so in the panel we have Alice Eleftheriadis, who is a chief scientist of a company called Video, which most of you should be familiar with. That's the company which delivers a video communications. This is the pioneers of the SVC use in the video communications. Then we have Jan Linden, who already gave us a talk from Google. Carrie Brand from Plantronics, and I don't know how many of you, I don't know how you see Plantronics. We're going to have some presentations also. There will be Shantanu Sarkar from Plantronics presenting tomorrow, but Plantronics is doing pretty amazing stuff. You think of, you say Plantronics, you think handset, but it's pretty amazing. Ask Carrie for some of the demos. You're not going to regret. And we have David Price from Ericsson, who already talked today about HTML5 and all the TV and all the stuff. Okay, so these are our panelists. So again, I have some questions. If anyone wants to jump in and open, please. So this is the idea here is that this is a panel. It's panel for everybody, and we didn't do Q&A with the session. So if you have any questions which you want to start with, go ahead. I have my list of questions. Okay, I don't see a show of hands. Okay, so let me start. And guys, we have one mic, but I mean, we have two mics we can share. So WebRTC is really different paradigm of building communication applications. But the interesting part about WebRTC, it's while it's run in the standards, a lot of that is not necessarily fully defined, and that's not fully defined by purpose, like for instance the signaling protocol. So the first question, and which might be pretty obvious, but the question I want to start with, when the new technology shows up, right, in a lot of cases, the expectation is it's going to be a forklift upgrade. We're going to wake up tomorrow, everything is powered by the new technology, everything works fine, and that's it. And nobody cares about any legacy stuff. Whatever was before, no matter. New technology is there, and the world starts from the new technology. That's what we call a forklift approach. At the same time, there are billions of the communication paradigms which exist today, which need or need not to be taken into account. So my question to the panel is, how do you see it? Is it forklift upgrade, or we're going to have to cooperate? Please.
Of course, it's extremely easy. Everybody will just sail into it and sail off in the sunset, and everybody's happy after that. Well, actually, the point I wanted to make is kind of interesting, is that what we see today, the most deployments of WebRTC today that in commercial applications, they're all interoperating with legacy technology. It's call center applications, it's type of applications, and they all go into service infrastructures that were already there, etc. And that's one of the beauties of not defining the call setup protocol, is that then you can do that easily and combine it with what you already have. So that's where we are today, that it's extremely easy to add as an endpoint to an existing system. If you want to change everything to WebRTC, I don't know what WebRTC is if you go beyond that. It's up for definition.
So I'll chime in. I think, as you mentioned in your talk, the evergreenness of web browsers. If you think about it from the forklift versus not forklift update, you're going to have, I don't know, however many hundreds of millions of these WebRTC endpoints enabled by an update, right? I think that's, so you'll have the endpoints there. It'll be just stitching it together with JavaScript over time. And so I think it will be the endpoints will be there, and then the infrastructure will follow.
Yeah, I wanted to add to this that in general, in WebRTC, you will not just have WebRTC endpoints. I think there is a perception that just with endpoints, you have a running application. That is not true. The whole concept is that the WebRTC client is going to connect to a server. That server will provide to the client all JavaScript code that is necessary to implement the business logic, the signaling, all the trimmings, if you wish, that constitute the value added that you are providing to your end user. So part of the value added could be at the server side, interoperability and interconnectivity with a bunch of different services, which, by the way, can be updated overnight without touching the end user's terminal at all, right? Just because next time they will visit the page, they will get the new JavaScript, okay? So this way you can roll in new functionality, right, just through, without changing the browser, just through downloading new code. So I think there is a clear path for interconnectivity with existing services, and I think it's true that the excitement is actually that the numbers of the new clients will overwhelm sort of the quote-unquote existing or legacy systems, okay? But what I would like to also point out that the perception is also that just because I put a JavaScript API on a video codec, somehow I solve the video communication problems, and this is absolutely not true. And a key component, and that's something, by the way, that the legacy systems have solved and have tried to solve for the past 20, 30 years. It's not an easy problem. And just because you put, again, a well-designed JavaScript API does not make those problems of IP-based communication any simpler. So care has to be taken to ensure that the quality that the end user will get, right, in the end, at that browser is going to be good, or at least good enough. Okay, and so the distinction also between legacy and which is a challenge also for WebRTC, is to deliver not only on the ability to program the client and to create new applications very quickly, to also, however, to not sell short the quality expectations that people have come to expect today from video communication.
Yeah, let me just add excellent points, and you both here mentioned the two parts of the updates that are really important. It's not the browsers are updated and the applications are updated. So everything that needs to be updated are updated. And the point that the endpoints is just one part of it, absolutely. But what's really, really changed in the game here is that every endpoint can be a really good endpoint. That's something we haven't had before, and accessible to anyone. And already today there's more than 1 billion endpoints that has WebRTC in them. They're still going to be better, support more things, and you really need the back-end infrastructures. And there are people building those things, and some of you have to build it yourself, and some will ride on someone else's, but that's obviously a big part of it. But actually, you can set up a one-on-one call without anything but simple JavaScript. But that's obviously not where everything's going to be in the future. And again, what I said before, the key thing for WebRTC is how easily you integrate that JavaScript with other gaming, collaboration, whatever you're writing, what kind of applications you're writing, putting that together very easily. That is the true power here, to take it away from just being an application to being a feature into anything.
Yeah, I could do. It's actually a framework that is going to stretch out in time. There's no set moments when there's going to be a transformative moment. So I think as we go through, we will see legacy systems become harder to work with, and they will fade and die and then be replaced by new ones as the whole system, the whole ecosystem goes through a series of gradual improvements, but on that framework that WebRTC provides.
Okay, so to a degree, and I'm oversimplifying, I would say, then we say that WebRTC is more or less an extension. We'll extend traditional conferencing to, or traditional communications to the areas where we could not go before. Is that? It's like enable creation of the new applications, but the infrastructure, let's say, as we have if carriers today deploy IMS infrastructure, it's not going to go anywhere, and the WebRTC will only extend that. Or so let's say, if we look at the mobile world, what is happening with the IMS as really a foundation for GLT networks?
Well, what we're seeing, I think you hit on it quite well, is that it's going to create the opportunities for much more hybrid based services where you have gaming with window-in-window type of communications going on, things like that. That is all made so much easier with this framework that WebRTC provides. I don't know if you want to enlarge on that, because I think that was one of the first big applications that we can see.
I think one, oops, I lost my train of thought. So if you
No, sure. Look, right now, the video communication is perceived as a standalone service, more or less. I mean, you go and grab your specific application to communicate. So it's completely disconnected from anything else you might be doing on your computer. And I think the reality is that as video communication has improved over the years, through several innovations, especially recently, what has happened is it has truly become more ubiquitous, and people do use it more and more. And that's why people actually started thinking that, wait a second, I could actually integrate it with other applications because it's good enough. So I think what WebRTC can do is, instead of relying, let's say, on the resources of a video company to integrate their video engine, let's say, to a particular application, right, that you might like, which is impossible because a video communications company cannot integrate with every application that might exist on the planet. That would be completely impossible. But what you can do instead is essentially by exposing an API, and you make that API a standard, right, rather than relying on a particular company's SDK, you allow developers to train themselves on that API and make that functionality available on other applications. And the concurrent effect of seeing more and more software as a service offerings, right, from all sorts of different things. I think today probably any application that you might want to run is probably available on a web browser, sort of like digital audio workstations and stuff like that, truly high-end applications. But pretty much most of the productivity applications are sitting on the web. So by making that possible, right, and because the technology allows it to happen, then you can utilize the effectiveness of application developers and if you wish, the design abilities of video coding engineers. Okay, so you don't have to make the application designers video coding people, and you don't have to make the video coding people application designers, because whoever has used a video coding application today has seen the result, meaning graphical user interfaces that are certainly not in par, right, with what we commonly expect from very high quality systems.
Okay, so you want to?
Yeah, I
got
just
your chain of thought.
Yeah, so to answer your question, if it's an extension in many ways, yes, because we don't really add any new from the perspective of video technology or so. But we do add something that is pretty important, and we don't talk about that a lot, especially not in a forum like this, but it's the data channel. Having the ability to send data directly from client to client without having to go through a server. That is another reason why you can get even more of the collaboration and integrated experiences across the web that you couldn't do before.
Okay. Any questions so far? Go ahead. we have microphones available for the audience. Right there. Thank you.
Yeah, I just have a quick question about the, right now in the WebRTC, it's only RV8 codec, video codec that's been included, right? So what is your position about the other video codec, like HEVC, or Chinese has another standard coming up, LVS, right? So there are multiple video codec standards out there. And right now, I know Google probably is working with RV9, but I just want to get your comments on that.
Before, I apologize. Can we wait a little bit with answering that question? Because that's the codec wars. That's before we jump into that, because that might finish our panel completely. Before we jump into that, hold on. Give me, I want to ask another question before we get to the codecs. That okay? It's a good question. It's an excellent question. No, we're going to get back to the codecs, but right now, so the one question I would like to understand. So the world as you presented, there was unified view from all of you, that the life was wonderful. So one question, and before we touch the codecs, I still have a question. I still have a question. So the interesting part, so the problem is today your video communication app, right, or your communication app, it is your bread and butter, no matter how it's implemented, if it's hardware, if it's software, it doesn't matter. That's your bread and butter. Now, that's your know-how, that's all of your, that's the stuff which you know how to deliver the best content possible to the user. Now, you take in the important parts of your app, and now you're going to be at the mercy of extremely fragmented world of the browser manufacturers. And by extremely fragmented, what I mean is, for instance, take an Apple ecosystem, Safari. I have no idea, but to the best of my knowledge, I don't think you can do WebRTC on the iPad, whatever. Maybe I'm wrong, but not until recently, at least. So you're going to have to supplement all those browser-based apps with actual apps in case the browser does not perform to your capabilities. So instead of kind of doing less work, you're going to have to do more work, or, okay, so I see
Not
John.
more work, since you're already doing it, and now you're removing some of it. So the first step is better, and we're getting to best, but we're not there yet. But if you're already building a mobile app, so, but for Android you can do a WebRTC app if you want to, a web app. For all the desktops you can do it. So then that's better than having to build an Android app, an iOS app, and several desktop apps.
But even on the desktop, it's not going to be uniformly run between Internet Explorer and Mozilla and Opera. Will it run uniformly with the WebRTC? They all have the same support?
But we're going through this transitory period, though, where there is going to be fragmentation. But just like species do, so does technology. We have a thing called Darwin, and it eventually will filter out the weak. And that's what will happen over a period of probably about 5 years' time. I think by the time we get to certainly 2020, I think there'll be a pretty ubiquitous way in which video is completely native to every device and every user experience. I don't think for now we should look at this as a problem that is going to halt that progress. I think it's just part of the transition.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, we've seen examples of this in pretty recent history. If you look at how web applications were largely static pages, and then we had the advent of Web 2.0 or asynchronous communications over XML. That was not standardized for a very long time, and there was libraries that were written to kind of compensate for that, as well as plugins. I think we'll see the same kind of transition with WebRTC as well.
Yeah, and although the orthodox canon says that the WebRTC should be built into the browser, probably the reality is that it may not be the case. However, with plugins, you could certainly expose that sort of functionality to an application. So it's not as easy to use from a user point of view that you have to install a plugin. But on the other hand, you do reap all the benefits of application development. It's the same application that will run on the browser, even if the browser has to be fitted by the end user with a appropriate plugin. Okay, so
the life will be good, but we need to work on that.
Let's talk about. So to follow the Darwinian paradigm, there are predators out there, and so WebRTC is is young and not very powerful yet, right? It has strong parents, but so there will definitely be changes down the road. Nobody can foresee that, but I completely agree that in the end there has to be a way to write a web app that uses video and audio in an integrated way. I think there's no doubt. And I think that's a great first start. It might be the only start that we need. Maybe, I don't know, changes. But I think there's a clear, how should I say, there's even commitment, I think, from industry, if not desire, to actually make it happen. So there's no doubt it will happen.
But it should be an ecosystem commitment. That's one of the issues, because you have to also get the commitment from all the browser manufacturers.
Can I make a plug on my Death of the MCU talk, because it will be very Darwinian. It's on Thursday.
We're going to talk again about Death of MCU?
Yes.
Okay. No, that's not right now, but Alex will definitely, there is no conference when Alex would not speak about Death of MCU.
Just to finish this one thing, it's not straight out of the oven, though. It is, I mean, Ericsson, we did the first demonstration back in March 2011, and in the internet age, that's 3 years almost, and that's a long time. So I think we're past the point of what we call infant mortality.
Okay, so before we get the new question, let's jump to now, let's open the VP8, VP9, H.264, H.265 topic. You wanted to extend on the previous one, or
it's
we can
totally different topic.
So let's wait with that. So let's get to the VP8, and that was the question which we had. And
let me try to make it simple. Well, look, there used to be a codec. Well, I'll speak for myself. I cannot represent everybody, right? So obviously, video was involved in the development of H.264 SVC, the scalable video coding extension of 264. It is involved in the development of HEVC as well as HEVC scalable, right? And again, we are in a business where having codecs for which you have to pay IPR is okay. It has been okay forever. And that is the model of developing codecs. That has been the model, the way of developing codecs for many, many years. Okay. Now, for other reasons, others do not want to use codecs that have associated licensing fee. That's definitely, acceptable, and they have the good reasons for, for doing that. So you cannot. There's no way to bridge those two desires. It is what it is. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the fact is that codecs come and go, right? They evolve, and what is important is to ensure the best quality that you can for the end users. So, for example, video has been associated with SVC. But in actual fact, we started off with SVC because it was the first scalable codec that had what we needed to make things work, right? But as time goes on, people do appreciate that scalability is useful for packet-based video communication. And in fact, other codecs now have scalability. VP8 has scalability. We provided, right, the features in the VP8 payload format, right, are the same as the features that are in the SVC payload format. And they will be the same as they are in the HEVC payload format. I think that's something that people miss. So what I'm saying is that in the end of the day, we have to be prepared for multiple codecs, because there are different business reasons for what people select. I don't think in anything we can mandate a single solution. I cannot mandate everybody to use the same phone, same browser, etc. So the pragmatist in me says, right? Of course, people want to have one thing for one, for the particular reasons, but people will make choices. So as long as technologists make sure that we can satisfy those business needs without sacrificing quality, and do by incorporating the best to continue the Darwinian evolution, right? And we don't end up roadkill or again on the evolution path. I think that's okay. So that's why I'm saying we don't need to conclude on a single codec, okay?
Right, but there is one challenge. So even let's say your modified VP8 codec, you assume video end-to-end solution. You have to ensure a minimum interoperability. This was always the same with any of the video implementations. For instance, I'm sorry, I'm jumping specifically on video, but there was always a minimum interoperable set of codecs ensured. Now, you either have to do video to video, or you will have to, if you got VP8 on one side and H.264 on another side, guess what? You're not talking.
Correct, unless you go through a server that does the transcoding, right, the conversion. Well, that's
Sure.
the reality, guys. That's, you know, no matter how much you might want to, you know, say A or B, in the end of the day, you know, if you want to talk to somebody that doesn't have your technology, you have to find somebody who will sell you the conversion process. If it's important for you to use technology A to talk to person B that uses some, you know, the other technology, you gotta find an intermediary or convince the other buyer to upgrade. Right? You know.
Yeah, and there might be that one browser supports what you want, so then you say, okay, let's use that browser. But so yeah, when it comes to a mandatory to implement codec, it has to be something that everybody can implement. And if you can't find one that everyone can implement, then okay, let's do what we can and try to have as big overlap as we can. I don't personally see that as an easy equation to solve. But again, there are choices. There are 5 major browsers out there. You can pick whichever you want. And if they happen to support different codecs, okay, it makes it harder to talk directly, but you can always manage that. So not a huge problem in my way. Then there is always, and I know that you might not look at it that way, but there is a minimum interoperability set, and that's audio only. Has worked pretty well for a long time, and if that's the only way you can connect, I think that's fine in many use cases.
I think there's only one thing that the industry hates more than paying royalties, and that is having the future controlled by one company. If you look back at history, you have to look back at history, otherwise you're condemned to repeat it. And Microsoft tried to do something fairly similar when the MPEG-2 reign was coming to an end, and they saw an opportunity to put Windows Media into that's the successor line. They went down a path of doing some great marketing on what was Windows Media 9, became VC9, became VC1, when it was actually opened up as a standard. When it was opened up as a quasi-standard, we found all the same intellectual property inside VC1 as was in H.264. So eventually, the licensing terms for VC1 were deemed to be identical to H.264, which was therefore muted completely the reason for trying to get to that. I suspect the same thing will happen here, but HEVC clearly is the successor for H.264, certainly in professional broadcasting, and it has the potential to be a successor to H.264 in this RTC space. And I believe that as we see the IPR come to the end of its life, for instance, B-frames, that patent ran out last year. Slowly but surely, all these patents are running out, and the guys in China with AVS have taken advantage of that and have got themselves in quite a good position to have a royalty-free codec. So I think eventually this will all map out and we'll be okay, but we still have to have a standards-based solution. I think if we have a proprietary solution, the industry will fail.
Yeah, there's also a point to be made about differentiating quality. In other words, you could use the same graphics library, but then if you buy the super duper graphics card, you know, it will definitely look better. And you can make the same argument for codecs as well. So there's a point to be made about having basic interoperability, but then let's say for a company, it would be nice if they could actually pay more to get the better video quality experience that they might want to have in their internal meetings. Maybe, you know, it won't work with a external participants, but maybe internally within the company they want to have that super duper codec. So there should be a way to upsell, in other words, the quality, because things get better, and there should be a way to integrate that improvement into the system, especially for downloadable software. So contrary to a broadcast situation where you cannot easily change the recorder, certainly on a web application that should be possible. Okay.
Right. Only the challenge is now, someone I think in one of your slides there was something saying it's free, and in this world, someone gonna pay. So there is no such thing as free. So someone is paying. So the question is, so let's say if we're talking about the H.264, 265, without waiting for the expiration of the patents and everything, which is typically 20 years, right? 19, okay. Big difference. Right. So you have a problem because all the browser manufacturers have to pay, or who will pay for the use of those great codecs? So that becomes an interesting point.
Well, we paid a lot for codec, so you shouldn't have to. That's the whole idea.
We could always go down to what, H323? Is that correct? Is that one? Yeah, we could. That's the upscale thing, right? I mean, that's an open codec, right? No. Relatively royalty free. No, 323 is not a codec. H.261, 261.
261.
Yeah. Okay, so is that one
That's over and done with patent-wise. You can use
bad quality, but
you're not gonna find anyone using it today. There is no system using it today, pretty much.
But that would be an option, right? I'm just adding to the fire here, but yeah. Okay.
Look, it's the same with codecs, right? I mean, you can use super high, very high quality codecs today. People don't mandate them to be mandatory, right? They're the latest, state of the art. And you use older codecs. You could certainly do the same for video. The quality differential is substantial. Okay, there's no doubt. But it will be a way out for sure.
It's definitely preferable to do a transcoding in that case.
Yeah. So I think the answer to your question is transcoding. So in the end of the day, or today at least, that should be solved over transcoding.
And to that point too, I just going to add one thing, and that's bandwidth is more expensive than CPU, and transcoding is not as expensive as people might think in terms of actual cost.
Yeah, Carmelo, you will get it in a second. Let's finish this topic. Let's close on this. 1 second, Istvan. Well, you also on the codecs? Of course.
Yeah, I understand your point about the transcoding, but like you said, the IP is a major concern out there, right? And someone was saying that the IP is not going to expire after 19 years or 18 years, right? So how are you going to get the royalty-free codec out there, except VP8 for VP9? Google is willing to give it out for royalty-free, right? And is that going to work? I really thought about it, so.
Actually, to kind of a follow-up on the codec, I know that CC is more on the video side, I'm on the voice side, and I'm actually the next speaker. I was going to hold on some of my questions and comments to my own session. But the fact of the matter is that I personally think that the concept of a codec, to some extent, has to be a concept of plugging into the client. If a client comes and says, you have to use this particular codecs, it kind of doesn't make sense, I mean, that's why we came up with the IMS. IMS, SIP-SDP negotiation was brought into a possibility that the two clients to be able to negotiate the capability of each other and be able to offer to each other what their capability is and then establish the connectivity. To me, I think that is what is missing on the WebRTC today, meaning that the codec is not a plugging type of a concept. It is already embedded into the client.
No,
right?
no, no.
So-
There is SDP negotiation in
Yeah,
there.
but it's a SIP is actually a proprietary SIP negotiation that it is not following the standard, my understanding. And if you look at the mobile WebRTC concept, that this is kind of a follow-up of what I was going to say. Today, the IMS uses the standard 3GPP codecs, AMR wideband, where the WebRTC, even though there is a work item generated through the 3GPP to establish a mobile version of the WebRTC, WebRTC today does not allow any resident cellular codecs to be plugged into the client, just mainly because they're talking about royalty-free. And another comment on that, I know it's kind of hard because you guys are in favor of the WebRTC. It would have been nice if the panel had some people that they were not. I think another issue that is
It's
also
hard to find.
it's also if you were talking
We're
about
looking
the
everywhere.
codecs. In fact, I am quite familiar with the Skype and Silk codec. If you remember when Skype came up with Silk, they said Silk is free, everybody can use it. But then when you were going to ask for the client, which was basically a Skype call, oh, that is not free. You can. It's all proprietary. So it's not so much of a codec per se. It's more of a whole, the whole sort of a up and down client modeling that has to be open. The codec fragmentation, the only people who benefit from it is part of your panel, is on the infrastructure where the transcoding has to be paid. I think usually a better solution is not to do transcoding, especially with video. Video transcoding really degrades the quality of the call, and not to mention the complexity and cost and so on, and the delay and so on. So I don't believe the transcoding is really the solution for the future.
So first, I don't think you're going to sell much to the web community by using IMS as a model for anything. That's kind of what we want to avoid. But anyway, there is no restrictions on what codecs to implement. Absolutely no restrictions whatsoever. Implement whatever codec you want in whatever browser you want. Then how you as a web developer get access to them, it depends on what the underlying platform has. But there is no restrictions on having support for H.264, all the audio and video codecs that happen to be in hardware. It's all possible, and actually the discussion on the audio codecs side right now is that some people want it to be recommended that you should support whatever is available in hardware. That's not decided yet, but that's a possibility.
And just to finish that, essentially, so one thing which, so even with the capability negotiation which you have in IMS and all other signaling protocols, even with that capability negotiation, that does not change anything about royalty-free versus not royalty-free, because, I mean, again, you might not have common codec in place for that capability negotiation to be successful. So it doesn't buy you too much, And the mechanism is there. There is SDP is official or not, but SDP is part of the whole process in WebRTC, and SDP has the model for negotiation. So I don't think, and it's don't forget, it's the same community which kind of designed the IMS, SIP, and everything else is now working on extensions of what WebRTC is. It's the same IETF, so I don't think they're gonna make they got some experience in this area. So I think that will be addressed, but there are some other issues, of course. You wanted to add something before we jump to the? Oh,
about this against WebRTC. I mean, there's nothing to be against too. Honestly, I cannot. In other words, it does not exclude anything else. It's a new thing. So in that respect,
yeah, but yeah.
So yeah, and I think people this whole codec thing again. It's easy to get narrowed down to that, but we're missing the huge potential that opening up application development represents. We're talking about a whole new industry of utilization of video, and we're now debating whether or not the mandatory will be. I mean, honestly, I think it's missing the forest for the not the tree, but for the stone behind the tree. I honestly think it's not a major deal, because in the end, nobody will enforce a single solution. Nobody can, nobody will, right? In the end of the day, you know, the marketplace will drive the reality. So if you have a fantastic application that happens to use a new codec that we don't know, trust me, people will run after it and will install it. And already we're making choices. I'm using an Apple laptop, others are using Windows PCs. You already made your choice, right? I cannot run Windows applications on my Mac, but guess what? Some people did want to do that, and then there are companies who made software to allow me to do that. Who would think that, right? 10 years ago that you would be able to do that. Well, it happened. So that's why there's nothing to be against. I think we should be excited. And again, I don't want to waste, honestly, time, you know, on this codec war, because in the end, you know, it's not even a matter of specific individuals. There are market forces at play that none of us individually can really control. So,
Yeah. Easton. Easton had a question.
Well, a couple of observations. So first of all, I can also confirm what came out on, I think, on 2 slides, that really in a web environment, the royalty-free stuff, it is very important. So we in ECMA, where we have the, for instance, the JavaScript standardization. So I hear always from the people that this is absolutely a basic thing, and actually we were pushed from the JavaScript developer community also to change or to extend our patent policy and also the software copyright policy to allow royalty-free development of standard, which is not possible in ITU, not possible in ISO. They go all with a rent-based policy. So I really have the feeling that if you try to push the H.264, H.265 type of environment, codecs in that sort of environment, then I have really my doubts whether in the long run that would go. So this is the first observation which I have. The second one is that the people also in the JavaScript development community, one of the projects that they are having is really to improve the speed of JavaScript very heavily, and companies like Intel, you know, who are making the processors and so on, they are very much behind it, and we have proposals on the table and already in quite advanced stage where just by downloading then applications such as codecs, games, and so on, we can achieve a factor of already with the current processors with a factor of 16 or so in order to improve the speed of JavaScript. So it might be in that case possible that you just download one common codex. I don't know, it would be the royalty-free Near-Starkey codec, and then everybody would use that, and you wouldn't need to fall back to a mandatory something. So this is a sort of development scenario which I see, at least from the standardization that we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that no comments. Yeah, Carmelo.
Good afternoon, Carmelo from Belgium. Before to make a U-turn with my own question, just want to say that, okay, transcoding is a nice thing, but one of the key issues of transcoding, it makes a nice place for eavesdropping. And as you know, with these times where NSA and many others are willing to listen to what we are doing, that's a nice technology to introduce, transcoding to put place where to listen. Nevertheless, my question is the following. I don't want to get into the pitfall of raising a common engineering question, but most of us knows that there is a difference between a web developer and an application developer. And this will raise to my own question, what about the security? We all know that WebRTC is very nice. It uses lots of JavaScript. JavaScript is known to be easy for web developers, but breaks all the, let's say, reflection of network security architecture, application architecture, and so on. So what do you think about that? Should we forget about security?
I think you're turning it completely upside down. The web is much more secure than your native application that can have total access to your whole operating system and everything, while at least a browser like Chrome that has a sandboxed environment, you can't get access to those things. So breaking something from that is extremely hard. And all our focus today is on making the web more secure, because that's where everything is happening. And even if you do an application, you still now, you hook it up to the web. So you're not changing anything there. That's my...
Yeah, I would also say that with today's fast JavaScript engines, it's not just somebody being a script kiddie and sticking some JavaScript and HTML in certain spots. It's actually, you can build very, very sophisticated applications. I have seen examples of codecs being compiled with JavaScript and actually rendered in the browser. So I think that would be a mistake to assume that it's just a web developer. I think it does significantly lower the barriers for developers to write communication applications, because it is a great platform for that, but I do not think it's trivial, or the developers are trivial by any means.
And if we're talking about real-time communication, which is what we are, then it's not really something that where an asset is being transmitted has a high value. It's just the intelligence of being able to listen into that. So I don't think the NSA will have a problem either way. They have more power to get into any one of our conversations than we really would care to understand.
And of course, you always have a choice. For the highly secure communication, use something else. So if it works for 90% of the, already we have communication that we do routinely every day that's not secure. Right.
Thank you. Any more questions from the audience? You have another one? Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a couple of clarification. The reason, when I said that I was against WebRTC, I was more addressing the questions from the operator's perspective. And I think I'm the next speaker. I'll talk a little bit more about that. I think one of the issues that I wanted to also raise is that when we talk about the royalty, if you purchase a device, secondary who is paying for that, whether or not you're buying that in the open market or the operators are the one who subsidize the cost of that terminal, you're effectively paying for that royalty of that technology that is in there. So whether or not it's a codecs or whatever other technologies. So from the royalty licensing issue, it should never really come into the communication, because I, as a user, when I'm making this device to establish a call, I don't have to pay $1 more just because I'm using VP8, VP9, or HVAC or any other technology. That technology, that whatever that is residing in the device, is the technology that should be used to establish connectivity, whichever way that I want to use that connectivity. So royalty-related issues is really what it comes down to, what you pointed out as a recommended fragmentation solution, which to some extent goes back to the infrastructure and the media gateway providers, where they would license the technologies in the fragmented market, and they charge 1,000 over to the operators for the cost of supporting multiple codecs. So to some extent, as you said earlier, somebody has to pay. Nothing is free in this world. And I think in this case, the operators are the one who have to pay. And we are on the terminal side. We Qualcomm makes chips for the terminal. They come to us and say, you guys do it. We don't want to do it. We don't want to pay extra for the infrastructure supporting WebRTC. Whatever codec fragmentation is there, you guys solve on the terminal. So you can see how the ball is turning around. So we end up paying for that, or the OEM vendors, the handset vendors have to pay for it. So that is where I think it's a little bit wrong. The whole modeling is wrong. And not to mention that Google, of course, is one of the lead Android provider. There are other, as you discussed, there are other OSs that they probably want to have a claim of their own solution to move forward. So to some extent, then Google is becoming, pushy in regard of pushing their own technology through, and not being open-minded in regard to really understanding whether or not there are other opportunities in there, and to some extent being open, from that perspective of what I was saying earlier, that the browser has to be, if the browser is used for communication, and to some extent I always question whether or not it's a B2B communication or is it B2C. I think it's more of I would say it's a B2B, it can be a B2C, and if it's a B2C business to the consumer or business to business model, Then I can see that the browser, when you are in the browser, you're having more capability of shopping. If you're shopping, you connect yourself to a portal and be able to not only use text, you can also use voice. From that, I have nothing wrong with it. But when it becomes purely a mobile to mobile, especially on the mobile space, a mobile to mobile de facto communication, that's where I have a lot of issues with it.
Look, this discussion would actually be for a patent on intellectual property law and licensing. I don't think this is the right place for us to have it. But I want to point out that ultimately the terms of all these licenses are not up to the customers. They are up to the owners of the rights. The government gives rights to people for inventing things. It's up to them to decide what they want to do. We can push them, right? I'm actually on both sides. I'm a licensor and a licensee of video patents, okay? So as a customer, I can push, but it's, the other party's property and they can decide what to do with it. So we can discuss it at length. We can take hours to discuss the merits of who pays for what, etc. Again, I'm not sure if it will be a productive use of our time, but I want to point out it's a very complicated matter. Even the licensing agencies like MPGLA change their own opinions of what to do in different licensing agreements. There's no, single licensing agreement that's applied everywhere, right? And not everybody subscribes to these licensing agreements. Not all patent owners become part of the pools. Not everybody who uses technology licenses from the pool. There is ongoing litigation. I mean, this is the real world. I mean, there is everything out there. I mean, you can, all the different variations, you can find them. So I don't think we can make, we can express maybe opinions, but I don't think, personally, I don't think there is any single answer to that. Again, there are forces out there. They're trying their best to do each one of them for their interests. I would personally like somebody else to pay for my bills, for sure. But again, I don't know if that's going to happen. I can certainly advocate. But anyway, I'll pass the microphone to you because...
Yeah, we have 5 minutes.
Okay, I only need 15. No, first of all, of course, it's not only devices, terminals, whatever you want to call it, we're talking about. The royalty-free requirement is also from software applications and other things people want to do that interoperate. So that's outside of that, it's always paid for in the device. Then you said something about Google being pushing closed solutions. I don't know of any more open way of doing things than open sourcing, giving away all the IP you have for free. No one else has done that before, really. So calling that pushing a closed solution, I find incorrect.
I agree with you. There is one thing you could do, though, and I don't think you do it yet, and that's actually indemnify users.
And why should we be the first one to do that? As you just mentioned, you don't get that from MPGLA, you don't get it from anyone. You only get it from people that sell binary code that you can't look into. That's the only time you get indemnification.
Okay, so we have a few minutes before we close. So a quick question to all panelists. Oh, you.
I want to touch upon transcoding because it was. I want to touch upon transcoding. It was mentioned earlier, and I don't want to sound that I don't think anybody here would be supportive of transcoding. The opposite is true. Okay, the opposite is true.
But
it's
at the same time, nobody
it's
would be opposing
evil.
of transcoding
Sorry?
because that's nobody would oppose transcoding either because that's the only way to deliver service today.
No, it's the only way to convert from one format to another. You can deliver service without transcoding. Video, for example, gladly.
Let's not go there.
No, we will.
That's end-to-end.
On Thursday. Within one system, you can certainly not use transcoding, and you have a much better experience. So I don't want to be perceived that I'm somehow advocating transcoding. The absolute opposite is true. Okay, the absolute opposite.
Agreed.
I'll stay neutral on that. Okay, so the last question I have for the panelists. And it's a bit self-directed. So IMTC created recently WebRTC activity group. So can each one of you guys say a few words? What do you see the role of that? I mean, where should we take that activity?
Look, I always thought of IMTC as a great place for the industry collectively to sit down and deliberate about what is happening out there, and also try to influence development in other standardization organizations. So in that respect, I was very supportive of the creation of the group, right? Even though if you ask me exactly what it is that we're going to do, I cannot tell you. Part of the reason is because this is something which is in flux. But as with other things in the past, in some things we actually led the effort, like with telepresence, for example, that Steve Botzko is now leading at the ITU. That was work that was created initially here. We don't do standards, so that is done in the ITU. In this instance, we're not leading the standardization activity, but we certainly, as a representative of the core communication sort of industry, okay, we should certainly follow, and I think having the group here will give us an opportunity to be ready to address any issues that arise for interoperability, for the codecs, for the signaling, what have you.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. And in particular, if you look at the W3C and the ITF activities going on, there is not a coverage of everything that the group here has expertise in. So there are definitely areas where some help could be appreciated.
Yeah, I would agree. I think monitoring what's going on in the standards bodies, monitoring what's going on as far as browser vendors, and then also looking at some of the use cases that we're starting to see form around how this is going to be deployed at scale, are probably monitor mode first, and then figure out what to do later.
And I believe the IMTC has a vital role to not just advocate the adoption of WebRTC, but also to educate the industry. Having events like this, having panels like this, is a way of making sure that the misunderstandings that there clearly are quickly eradicated so that progress can be made quickly.
Thank you. So, John, just for your information, you is the only one here who is not a member of IMTC, I mean, in this panel, so I'll give you a membership agreement to sign later on. Okay, I would like, please join me in thanking our panel. I think it was very interesting. Thank you very much, gentlemen.